We are officially 21 hours away before Trump is officially inaugurated and the 47th president of the United States. And the Americans are stoked. They're pumped. Canada, squeezing their buttholes a little bit, if I'm being honest. A little nervous, as we've seen the chaos over the past week amongst our political class, not knowing what they're doing. Trudeau doing his last hoorah of screwing over the Canadian people, saying, we're not going to work with this government. We're going to put the screws to them and plunge our Canadian people into the Stone Age in the process. That's where we're aiming. That's where things are at. That's what we've seen this past week. The battle between Ontario and Danielle Smith. The battle between Canada and Danielle Smith, unfortunately, as Trudeau has done his best to pit everybody against her. She's an army of one fighting against the rest. Danielle versus everybody. Might as well make a shirt of it. And that's where it brings us to our first story today. Canada, our RCMP. In response to Trump's threats over these tariffs and making sure we secure our border, they rushed out and bought Chinese drones. Drones that the Americans do not want us to be using to check the border. The American government believes that these drones and the company who makes these drones are linked to spying for the Chinese government. So the Americans are like, what? I mean, great try. But why? What are we doing here? From the French CBC, this article completely translated from French into English, but as Canada bought Chinese drones that are unusable at the border. The RCMP thought it was doing the right thing by purchasing drones to monitor the border with the United States, but it chose a Chinese brand that the Americans no longer want to see flying, Radio Canada has learned. The organization purchased DJI drones, despite knowing they cannot be used at the border, a Canadian agent who is not authorized to speak publicly. Two other sources familiar with the matter confirmed that rushed to place the order in with the wake of the election of Donald Trump, who will be sworn in as the 47th president on Monday. This is the stuff that me and Reg and I've been talking about for the past week. And we've seen it ourselves, those who watch this show. Our political class over the past 9 years has turned our country into an absolute joke. We are not to be taken seriously, and they continue to plunge our country into absolute ruin. Thus, that's why we're here. We couldn't act in a proactive manner. No, proactivism is just not a part of the liberal lingo. No, we're going to send everything overseas, remove everything in the country, completely gut the country of any type of morale that it has, ruin its cultural symbols, and then we're going to have a crazy mass immigration program with no checks or balances that is going to completely throw the culture of Canada out of whack. And you say that in a sentence, and then it becomes clear that this was never incompetence, but likely done in malice, and this is where we're currently at. Now, they plunged our country into a place where we are at our knees, and Trump is at a place where he knows that, and we have nothing to bargain for. So now, what happens? Trump comes in, threatens these tariffs. And like our political class, our government entities are reacting in kind. Oh man, we got to get this thing started. They're throwing money at us to get this border figured out. Okay, we need to get drones. We need to get drones. Get some drones. Not really doing the research on it, or even knowing the research, but hoping they can get away with it. And I get it. I understand. You want to get the best technology. DJI drones are, from a mainstream perspective, are seen as top of the line. So I understand if you're in a rush, you're trying to react, you're not in a place of strength, not being proactive, that's what you'd go ahead and do. And this is what we've done. We've now put a bunch of money into drones that we cannot use now, which is just another summation of the chaos we've seen with our country and our representatives trying to deal with this Trump situation. Kevin Vuong, independent MP, retweets a graphic from Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, says the possibility of terrorists crossing the US-Canada border is deeply concerning and given the deep penetration of Gazan society by Hamas. It would be irresponsible for the U.S. to not take necessary heightened precautions when foreigners attempt to enter the United States. And Kevin Vuong quote tweeted this and said, if Americans are worried about terrorists crossing into the U.S. from Canada, that means the people they're concerned about are already in our country. We've already had a few close calls here. When will the Trudeau government take the national security and safety of Canadians seriously? And I appreciate Kevin calling this out. I think it's important. Yes, we've had a lot of close calls. We literally have 3 terror groups operating within the country as we speak. And Americans know that and have been concerned about that. And there being such an easy access from Canada into the United States. And from what we've seen from our political class here in Canada, and if we believe their decisions were made in malice, that means Donald Trump and his team think the same thing. I think that's why Donald Trump was so heavy when he first came in, talking about, I love the Canadians. I love Canada. More or less words, he says, I just don't like Trudeau. I don't like their leaders. I don't like how they negotiate. And if we think this is all a mouse and this is all from the World Economic Forum, that means Trump views Canada as a hostile nation. And he made sure to make the delineation. He's like, I know the people are great. Their leadership is not. And that's why he's been taking such a strong stance against us. And do you know who gets caught in the middle of all of it? It's normal people, unfortunately. Until we're able to get this government out of power and get control of our institutions back from a hostile outside force. And with things so out of control, and where we're seeing the liberals trying to push the can down the road and get some roadway open for Carney and Freeland trying to run to take leadership of the party. And we're seeing the people who are still running a skeleton crew in the Canadian government at the moment, trying to navigate these tariffs and how they're going to fight back. And how the results of that, Daniel Smith made very clear of what could happen, at least to Alberta, if they put an export tax on Alberta oil. This tariff war could put us in some really bad shape as a country. This response is not the response we want to be seeing right now. This is not what we want to see. And as Canadians, we're in a lose-lose situation, it feels like. We want a government in power negotiating these tariffs with a mandate, not a government who's just putting our political processes in a headlock to make sure that they can maintain power. No one wants you in power right now. We want a government who has a mandate to negotiate. And this is the issue, is that Trump knows this, knows that we don't actually have a serious team behind this right now. And so what will happen is we have to wait it all out, wait until March when the liberals figure things out, and then likely they could push the can down the road again. So we need an election now. We need to get this stuff figured out now, because if we don't get it figured out, we're going to be in a tough spot. That's why this story is so important right now. Judge agrees to expedite legal challenge of Trudeau's move to prorogue Parliament. So this is a story you've been kind of seeing floating around in the background right now. We have a team of lawyers who are challenging Trudeau's decision to prorogue Parliament. There is legal means for proroguement to be annulled and for us to go right back to Parliament and get stuff figured out, as we're facing some tough times as a country at the moment. A court has agreed to expedite its hearing of a legal challenge of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's move to prorogue Parliament. In ruling like Saturday, Federal Court Chief Justice Paul Crampton said that court's usual rules on timelines will not apply, setting the stage for a hearing February 13th and 14th in Ottawa. In their application filed January 8th, Nova Scotia residents David McKinnon and Aries Lavronos seek an order setting aside Trudeau's decision to advise Governor General Mary Simon to exercise her power to prorogue Parliament until March 24th. McKinnon and Lavronos also request a declaration that this session of Parliament has not been prorogued. And people have not really been hopeful on this one. People have not been excited that this will actually go through, or hopeful it'll go through. But the fact they're willing to hear it is encouraging, and we'll take it for what it can be. Because if this can go through and Parliament can come back, remove the proroguement, and come back, and we can get a vote of non-confidence, oh baby, that would be beautiful. It would be awesome. Get us to an election ASAP. We need it. And that's why we're in a tough spot as Canadians. As I said, because of the horrible decisions made to put our country where it is, we're not in a place to negotiate with Trump. We're not in a position of strength. As he's coming at us with intention to make sure we're pulling our weight, we're not in a place to really pull that weight. And now we have a government in chaos, our institutions running around like chickens with their heads cut off, buying Chinese drones, threatening to fight the Americans every step of the way, and in the process, potentially putting our country into an economic Stone Age. So that's why this story is very important, and we need to follow it closely and support the lead counsel on this. James Manson, feel free to follow him, check him out. He's been doing his rounds. He's done some good pieces with Northern Perspective and explaining the whole process and what's going on. And he's hopeful this could go somewhere. He's hopeful that we could get this overturned. Take that for what it is. This stuff is very important because in some way, I hate to say it, we're operating on hope and prayers at this point in order to get this government out of power as soon as possible because they can't keep holding us hostage like this. It's awful. It's equally important because as Mark Carney and Freeland make their runs, we're now seeing Carney's team during this leadership race is starting to buy up left-wing influencers on social media. You see this. Dale Johnson says support for Mark Carney across Canada is overwhelming. The electoral tides are turning. The future is brighter. Hope and electricity fill the air. Real solutions are on the way. Canadians are coming together and nothing can stop us. Are you in? He writes that. Then we see the same post from Chryssinda Minkham, and we see the same post from Dr. Matthew S. Johnston, and we're still waiting to see more that come forward. I originally saw this from the pleb who put me onto this. Thank you for him for this. And I guarantee we're going to start seeing more of these exact wordings moving forward in the next 24 hours. Because Dr. Matthew Johnson claims that they're stealing from him. Dale's been ripping my tweets off for a while now. We're sure. This reeks of a paid media campaign. We have no proof of it, but it reeks of it. Exact same wording, retweeting the exact same post. That's weird. And then you're going to say, no, they're copying me. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we don't believe you. And this is what I'm talking about, where we are being, exterior forces are trying to crush our country and our economy. Take it for what it is. But Liz Truss, former Prime Minister in the UK, warns Canadians of this. After printing too much money at the Bank of England, promoting disastrous net zero policies, and backing Rachel Reeves MP growth-killing economic plans, it seems Mark Carney wants to inflict these terrible ideas on Canada. Resist, Canadians. Resist. And that we will. We will fight tooth and nail. That's why I come here day in and day out, twice a day, to talk about these stories. Bring it to your attention. Rally the troops and fight, fight, fight. These people cannot be allowed to be in power anymore. These people cannot continue to lead our country down this path. We need to take it back. They've absolutely crushed our economy, crushed our way of life, crushed our institutions, and crushed our morale as a country, and figured out ways to divide Canadians against each other, and then turn around, point the finger at us, saying we're the ones who did it because we're calling it out. They'll gaslight you into oblivion, and that, my friends, is why we have to fight. Continue to fight against Mark Carney, fight against Freeland, fight against Trudeau, and fight against this whole Liberal Party who's completely and utterly been compromised by exterior forces. Don't believe me, especially those who happen to be of a left-wing background. Just go look at all their decisions they've made. They claim, they wrap it in the idea that's for the best for Canadians, but then you see how the policy's been rolled out and the effects it's had since, and it's only crushed us further. And that's why I'll end off with this. The hope that I have as our politicians here do a bunch of saber rattling, trying to act tough, trying to be cool, trying to make it look like they're doing something. Danielle Smith is doing the Lord's work. Enjoyed my dinner with Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott, along with his lovely family and friends. He's a big fan of Canadians. A lot of snowbirds call his state their second home. Took the opportunity to share how Alberta and Canada are the answers on energy and food security. She's doing the rounds, doing her best to maintain diplomacy and work through this disagreement we have with our neighbors with thought, sensitivity, and diplomacy. And for that, I thank her for it. At least someone's trying, instead of just trying to throw our country away in the process. As I've seen on social media, I know I'm very much in the minority on this, and I don't care. I will always back logic and understanding and diplomacy on these issues. I will never, ever side with the people who want to run a risk of putting our country into the ground economically, and then in turn, turn the money printer on to fix all the problems. Never will get me onto that. That's it for me. Enjoy your Sunday. Have a good one. I'm out.